In the autobiography of Thomas Elwood, an early Quaker, who at one time was secretary to John Milton, we find an exquisitely quaint and candid account of the trials he underwent, both at home and abroad, in following Fox's canons of sincerity. The anecdotes are too lengthy for citation, but Elwood sets down his manner of feeling about these things in a shorter passage, which I will quote as a characteristic utterance of spiritual sensibility. Says Elwood, quote, "By this divine light, then, I saw that though I had not the evil of the common uncleanliness, debauchery, profaneness, and pollutions of the world to put away, because I had, through the great goodness of God and a civil education, been preserved out of those grosser evils. Yet I had many other evils to put away and to cease from, some of which were not by the world, which lies in wickedness, accounted evils, but by the light of Christ were made manifest to me to be evils, and as such condemned in me. As particularly those fruits and effects of pride that discover themselves in the vanity and superfluity of apparel, which I took too much delight in. This evil of my doings I was required to put away and cease from, and judgment lay upon me till I did so. I took off from my apparel those unnecessary trimmings of lace, ribbons, and useless buttons, which had no real service, but were set on only for that which was by mistake called ornament, and I ceased to wear rings. Again, the giving of flattering titles to men, between whom and me there was not any relation to which such titles could be pretended to belong. This was an evil I had been much addicted to, and was accounted a ready artist in. Therefore this evil also was I required to put away and cease from. So that thenceforward I durst not say, Sir, Master, my Lord, Madam, or my Dame, or say your servant to any one to whom I did not stand in the real relation of a servant, which I had never done to any. Again, respect of persons, in uncovering the head and bowing the knee or body in salutation, was a practice I had been much in the use of. And this being one of the vain customs of the world, introduced by the spirit of the world instead of the true honor, which this is a false representation of, and used in deceit as a token of respect by persons one to another, who bear no real respect one to another, and besides this, being a type and a proper emblem of that divine honor which all ought to pay to Almighty God, and which all of all sorts, and take upon them the Christian name, appear in when they offer their prayers to him, and therefore should not be given to men, I found this to be one of those evils which I had been too long doing. Therefore I was now required to put it away and cease from it. Again, the corrupt and unsound form of speaking in the plural number to a single person, you to one instead of thou, contrary to the pure, plain, and single language of truth, thou to one, and you to more than one, which had always been used by God to men, and men to God, as well as one to another, from the oldest record of time till corrupt men for corrupt ends in latter and corrupt times, to flatter, fawn, and work upon the corrupt nature in men, brought in that false and senseless way of speaking you to one, which has since corrupted the modern languages, and hath greatly debased the spirits and depraved the manners of men. This evil custom I had been as forward in as others, and this I was now called out of and required to cease from. These and many more evil customs which had sprung up in the night of darkness and general apostasy from the truth and true religion were now, by the inshining of this pure ray of divine light in my conscience, gradually discovered to me to be what I ought to cease from, shun, and stand a witness against." Close quote. These early Quakers were Puritans indeed. The slightest inconsistency between profession and deed jarred some of them to active protest. John Woolman writes in his diary, quote, "In these journeys I have been where much cloth hath been dyed, and have at sundry times walked over ground where much of their dye-stuffs has drained away. This hath produced a longing in my mind that people might come into cleanness of spirit, cleanness of person, and cleanness about their houses and garments. Dyes being invented partly to please the eye and partly to hide dirt, I have felt in this weak state, when traveling in dirtiness, and affected with unwholesome scents, a strong desire that the nature of dyeing cloth to hide dirt may be more fully considered. Washing our garments to keep them sweet is cleanly, but it is the opposite to real cleanliness to hide dirt in them. Through giving way to hiding dirt in our garments, a spirit which would conceal that which is disagreeable is strengthened. Real cleanliness becometh a holy people, but hiding that which is not clean by coloring our garments seems contrary to the sweetness of sincerity. Through some sorts of dyes, cloth is rendered less useful, and if the value of dye-stuffs and expensive dyeing and the damage done to cloth were all added together, and that cost applied to keeping all sweet and clean, how much more would real cleanliness prevail? Thinking often on these things, the use of bats and garment dyes with a dye hurtful to them, and wearing more clothes in summer than are useful, grew more uneasy to me, believing them to be customs which have not their foundation in pure wisdom. The apprehension of being singular from my beloved friends was a strait upon me, and thus I continued in the use of some things, contrary to my judgment, about 9 months. Then I thought of getting a hat the natural color of the fur, but the apprehension of being looked upon as one affecting singularity felt uneasy to me. On this account I was under close exercise of mind in the time of our general spring meeting in 1762, greatly desiring to be rightly directed, when, being deeply bowed in spirit before the Lord, I was made willing to submit to what I apprehended was required of me, and when I returned home, got a hat of the natural color of the fur. In attending meetings, this singularity was a trial to me, and more especially at this time, as white hats were used by some who were fond of following the changeable modes of dress, and as some friends, who knew not from what motives I wore it, grew shy of me. I felt my way for a time shut up in the exercise of the ministry. Some friends were apprehensive that my wearing such a hat savored of an affective singularity. Those who spoke with me in a friendly way, I generally informed in a few words that I believed my wearing it was not in my own will." Close quote. When the craving for moral consistency and purity is developed to this degree, the subject may well find the outer world too full of shocks to dwell in, and can unify his life and keep his soul unspotted only by withdrawing from it. That law which impels the artist to achieve harmony in his composition by simply dropping out whatever jars or suggests a discord rules also in the spiritual life. To omit, says Stevenson, is the one art in literature. Quote, "If I knew how to omit, I should ask no other knowledge." Close quote. And life, when full of disorder and slackness and vague superfluity, can no more have what we call character than literature can have it under similar conditions. So monasteries and communities of sympathetic devotees open their doors, and in their changeless order, characterized by omissions quite as much as constituted of actions, the holy-minded person finds that inner smoothness and cleanness which it is torture to him to feel violated at every turn by the discordancy and brutality of secular existence. That the scrupulosity of purity may be carried to a fantastic extreme must be admitted. In this it resembles asceticism, to which further symptom of saintliness we had better turn next. The adjective ascetic is applied to conduct originating